Good morning, I'm Tricia from the Culinary Command Post, and today we're going to show you how to make a real quick dessert called apple crisp. So basically what you have to do is mix up the ingredients that's going to go in the bottom of your baking dish, and it's going to be cooking in the oven for about 40 to 45 minutes at 350 degrees. So we're going to spray our pan first. And then we're going to mix our ingredients with the apples. So we have about 3 cups of apples. So we're going to mix our ingredients with it. And so we have half a cup of brown sugar. And then we have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then we have all-purpose flour, about a 1/4 cup. And then we have our 1 teaspoon of vanilla, which is going to go in the mixture. So there's two deals. There's the bottom part and the topping. So all of this is the bottom part that's going to go in the pan. And then we've got 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And then you have half a teaspoon of nutmeg. And that's all that goes in the base of the dessert. You're going to mix it up. I've already sprayed the pan, and we're going to put it in the bottom. So you're going to mix your apples up with those ingredients. And then we're going to put the topping on top of it after we mix it up. Super easy. It does take about 40 to 45 minutes in the oven, but it doesn't take that long to get it all cut up and mixed up. So I want to make sure all my apples are coated. Alright, now I cut the apples up in about a bite-sized piece. Something like that size would be fine. And they're going to get soft once they get in the oven anyway, but I just make them bite-sized pieces. Just make sure you coat your apples with all of the ingredients before you put them in the pan. Just like that. Okay, now I'm going to pour the apples in the pan. It's about a 9 by 13 baking dish, and I did spray it with the olive oil cooking spray. Put them in the pan, spread them out. Spread them out evenly. Okay, so that's the base of the apple crisp dessert. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make the topping for it. Okay, so basically your topping is going to be your 3/4 cup of flour, your brown sugar, which is about 1 3/4 cup of brown sugar, 3/4 cup of flour, and then your cinnamon, which is going to be 1 teaspoon of flour. That's the first 3 ingredients. So we're going to mix them all up in a bowl. Just like that. And I've already preheating the oven to 350 degrees. And this is the same thing, what they call a crumble. So whether you're using apples as your base or blueberries or whatever your fruit is, I may try this recipe with peaches because I love peaches. And I might try the same recipe and put peaches in it instead of apples. Alright, so making sure everything's incorporated together in the bowl. And then I'm going to actually put our cold butter. Now the butter is a half a stick of butter. And I made sure it was in cubes, and it's cold, not just room temperature. So I'm going to cut the butter into this mixture of flour and cinnamon. Just like that. And if you don't have a pastry cutter, you can use a fork to put your butter in. So I'm just using my fork to cut the butter into the flour. And make sure your butter is cold when you do that. If you have a pastry blender, it's a lot easier to use. because then you can put it on a board and just chop it into the flour. And I'm just cutting the butter with this fork in little pieces. That's why you want to start out with like large size dice pieces when you're starting to mix the butter in with the flour. And this is going to be our topping for our apple crisp. And then we're going to add oats to it. And that's going to be old-fashioned oats, and it's 1 cup of whole rolled oats is what it is. And we'll stir in the oats last after we've got our butter cut into the flour. And then if you like caramel, we're going to melt some caramel after it gets out of the oven, and we're going to pour it on top of this apple crisp. You want to wait till it gets out of the oven though. If you want to make your own homemade caramel, it's super easy. All you need is sugar, water, unsalted butter, and heavy cream, and that's how you make homemade caramel. I'm making the dice-sized butter pieces into like pea sizes, so that way the flour's all got butter in it. And it's going to melt in the oven also. Okay, so I've got my butter cut into my flour. Now I'm going to add the oats, which is 1 cup of whole oats. And then I'm going to pour it on top of my apple mixture. And put it in the oven for about 40 to 45 minutes. Okay. Just like that. All right, I'm going to sprinkle it on top of the apples. You do want to use like a 9x13 baking pan, because if not it'll overflow. Just spread it out and we're ready to put it in the oven for 40 minutes. 40 to 45 depending on your oven. Now we're doing is sprinkling it over the apples. We're not stirring it, we're just sprinkling it on top. A little more on that one. All right, wipe my edges. I'm going to stick it in the oven for about 40 minutes to see if it's done. And then we'll add our melted caramel when it gets done. Now we're going to put it in the oven at 350 degrees for 40 minutes. And this is how it's going to look. That's how you make apple crisp so far.
Okay. It looks really nice.
That's your apple crisp with the oats on top. Now we're just going to pour the caramel on top. Let it get a little more melted. That's good. A little bit more. drizzle it over the top and that's done. I just melted our caramel in the microwave. Just like that, I'm going to drizzle it over our apple crisp dessert. You can use a squirt bottle or whatever you want to use. I'm just going to use the bowl. All you have to do is let it cool and it will be ready for serving. Just put it out if you want. That's pretty good. That's how you make apple crisp dessert.
Right. All right. Thanks for watching.